Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday here at Hyde Cottage. No books in the mail, no attention for Steve. And as usual, I thought I'd console myself with a tag. And I wrote one down the other night, but haven't even bothered to look at it, haven't prepared, haven't been spiritually up to it. Uh, but we'll see. I saw it on a bunch of channels that I watch but never comment on. There's a stratified layer of there are booktube channels usually big and very Hollywood glitzy that I watch but don't ever comment on. They don't seem to be interested in a community, or the community that they're interested in is closed. It's the first 100 friends they made years ago on BookTube, and they're not interested in anything else. So you get that feel. You don't bother to be trying to be part of that community, and then there's the community that we all have here, where we all do know each other and we all do talk to each other in the comments and whatnot. And I'd like to think that that community is open. I have seen that community embrace new people without hesitation. So, but in the first community, the one that I watch but don't comment on, I saw a book tag going around, and it looked like fun, as much fun as could be had on a mail-free weekend. So I wrote it down. It's the Guilty Reader book tag. At first, that seemed incongruous to me because I like a lot of you, I don't believe that guilt should be involved in reading. Um, but it's tough to avoid when you're raised Boston Irish Catholic. So let's take a look. Question number one is, but I should say, I saw it on a bunch of those extremely well lit channels. So I don't remember where I saw it first, and I don't know who created it. But if I can find that out, I will list it down below. Question number one is: have you ever re-gifted a book you've been given? uh, and my first response was to say no, because I think that books are extremely personal gifts, not just modules that can be plugged in one spot or another. I get books all the time that I don't want, uh, and the reason I get books that I don't want is because the person who's giving it to me thinks that a book is a module. Well, if it fits these basic parameters, then he must like it, and without any more thought given to the subject than that. And I don't like to do that in return. So somebody gives me, what's an example? Somebody years ago gave me a very expensive leather bound rare collector's edition of David Copperfield, and he did it specifically because, as he said when I saw him next and thanked him, well, I know you like books. Now, he and I had been talking for a decade, a solid decade or more. And in that time, over and over again, he had talked to me enough to know what kind of a reader I am. I had said to him over and over again in that time that A, I don't care about books as physical objects. I don't care about their collectability. I don't care about what special or rare edition they are. I don't care about such things at all, and I'm not going to treat them like I care. And two, I don't particularly care for Charles Dickens. He knew both of those things, and those two things combined completely eradicate the idea of giving me a rare collector's edition of any Dickens novel, and yet he did. And in a situation like that, I suppose it might be natural to think, well, who do I know who really would like this? But instead, I just got rid of it. I, if unless I'm sure, and if I'm sure, I want to do the picking. I don't want to get it from somebody else. Uh, so I guess the answer is no. I have never re-gifted a book that was given to me as a gift. I get rid of lots of books that are given to me as gifts, unfortunately. But I don't think I've ever turned around and given one as a gift, with the sole exception being that magical interlude where somebody gives me a book as a gift and I don't want it, but I haven't got around to get rid of it yet, when all of a sudden somebody sees it. Somebody comes here and sees it, uh, and says they'd like it, in which case I guess that counts as regifting. uh, Question number two: have you ever said you've read a book when you haven't? I don't believe I ever have. No. Question number three: have you ever borrowed a book and not returned it? I have. Yes. I was once, for a long time, caught up in the weird psychodrama of lending and borrowing personal books. I did it, and I lent books and I borrowed them. And it was when I was in that psychodrama, I realized an essential fact that I have said on this channel many times, which is that it's a totally failed system. It has never worked. It cannot work. It didn't work even the very first time in recorded history that we have an example of someone lending someone a book. It was when God lent Moses the first version of the Ten Commandments. And what did Moses do? He destroyed it. God had to do it all over again. And I was in that psychodrama on both ends. I would lend books to people. I'd say, here, you really should take this. You're going to love it. And they would never return it. And like you live long enough, you'll have friendships end over that, where the person never returns the book, and they spend the first year saying, oh, I'm meaning to get to that book. I'm going to get to it. I really am. And then they spend the second year saying, I'm never going to get to that book. I really should just return it to you. I no offense, I'm just never going to get to it. And then they spend the third year saying, yeah, I really can't find that book. I know that I owe you a book, but how about I buy a copy for you? I know it was your copy and it seemed to have your notes in it, but how about I buy you a new copy? And then after the third year, they don't meet your eye on the street. They walk in the other direction. And that is friendship ended because of lending and borrowing books. And I've done the same thing. Haven't been quite so bad about not reading the book, but I've been very bad about getting the book back in good shape. And I remember the distinct moment when I decided to get off that twisted merry-go-round. I'd just been in a friend's apartment and borrowed a book from them in London. And I was walking down the sidewalk and I was thinking, oh my God, why did you do that? Borne aloft by their enthusiasm and your willingness to seem open to the friendship that you have, you borrowed a book. You can't read a book without underlining. You can't read a book and carefully care whether or not the dogs get at it. So you're going to disappoint. This is certainly going to happen. What you should do is turn around at your heel, bring it back to their apartment and say, I'm not going to borrow this. Thanks. If you recommend it, I'll go and buy a copy. But I'm not going to borrow this copy. And then in that instant, on the sidewalk, I thought, oh, but that'll start a psychodrama of its own. Why not? No, I want you to borrow it. No, I want you to read it now. What, you don't like me? What, you, et cetera, et cetera. You don't think I trust you. So you know what I did? I took the book out of my satchel and threw it in the River Thames. Just break the cycle right there. I didn't wait until it was in too rotten a shape to return to its original owner. I just destroyed it. And after that point, that was a long, long time ago. After that point, I do not lend out books, and I don't borrow them from other people. If somebody wants a book of mine, I will get it for them. I will gladly find them a copy. I see hundreds of used books in good shape or even new shape every single week. Hundreds of them. And I tend not to recommend things that are tough to find. So if I want you to read a book, I will not, if you're here in this apartment, I've actually had it happen. People say, hey, can I take this? I'll get it back to you. I say, no, you can't. You may not borrow any of my books. My books are not here to borrow. If you like the look of it, you can either have it, you can walk off with it, or I will find you a copy. Most people seem okay with that. I'm certainly never going back. Question number 4. Have you ever read a series out of order? I have done this many, many times. Yeah, when I was thinking about this question, I realized, especially in science fiction and fantasy, I've come to science fiction and fantasy books innumerable times out of order. I read Prentice Alvin by Orson Scott Card before I read the first 2 books in the Alvin Maker series. And it was the enjoying Prentice Alvin that made me go back and read them. I read Farford and Grey Mouser out of order. I read the Elric books out of order. I read Stephen R. Donaldson's fantasy series starring a leper, Thomas Covenant. I read The Illyric War and The Power That Preserves, the second 2 books in the first trilogy, before I read Lord Foulsbane, the first book. And I remember when Lord Foulsbane came out, and I thought, oh, God, this is just so obviously a pastiche of the Fellowship of the Ring. Why would I bother to read it? It's just one among millions of pastiches of Lord of the Rings. Why would I bother? So I left it alone. I ignored it. And then when the second book came out, it actually landed in my possession somehow. I don't think I bought it, but I read it and loved it and thought, well, you got to go back. And the first book is terrible. So, but anyway, and also in terms of reading things, reading series out of order, if we were to broaden the question a bit to include comic books, then the number goes up astronomically, because I took a long time, a lot of convincing, a lot of vocal convincing from friends of mine, to embrace the idea that there might be anything good coming out of Marvel Comics. I remember friends telling me, no, I know these things they started off looking dumb, but there's some real good storytelling going on here. You really ought to give it a try. And, I ignored that for a long time. I was perfectly content with the Justice League and the Legion of Superheroes. But when I did, I had a lot of catching up to do. But that's fun to do, and comics used to handle that a lot better than they do now. Let's see here. Question number 5. Have you ever spoiled a book for someone? I'm sure that I have accidentally revealed a key plot point or a plot twist to someone. If that actually spoils a book for you, then you really ought to pursue a less adult hobby than reading. I realize I'm not in a perfect position to comment, because I was introduced to reading for pleasure by reading the classics of Greece and Rome, where the idea that there's a twist at the end that you don't know was relatively alien. And the whole point was that you knew the story ahead of time so that you could concentrate on how well it was being done. And silly me, I have since then always maintained that how well a story is done is far more important than whether or not so-and-so is killed at the end. And so that put an edge to my first year of watching BookTube. It was the first year I watched BookTube. It was almost exclusively, almost 100% devoted to YA. And YA is 100% devoted to not being reread. YA is 100% devoted to plot twists. Who falls in love with who? Who says that horrible thing? Oh my God, OMG. And once you know that, you've read the book, and there's no point in going back. Although some YA diehards do. It's the YA crowd that mostly invented the idea of spoilers and of spoiling a book, and rightfully so, because most of the books that they read actually can be spoiled. They don't have any art or texture to them. They literally can be spoiled if you know the big punchline that's coming. Which is why I think in the background of so many YA booktubers, the books look so pristine. Why wouldn't they look pristine if you've only read them once? Or anyway, even so, because I know that my own position on spoiling is a little unusual, I try to be careful, unless it's a work of the Western canon. If I inadvertently, if I don't go out of my way to do it, but if I inadvertently spoil the end of Romeo and Juliet for you because at age 27 you haven't read it yet, well, that's more your problem than mine. I try not to do it, but I'm not going to tiptoe around Oedipus Rex, 2,000 years after it was written. Anyway, question number 6. Have you ever dog-eared a book? Oh, BookTube. I do this all the time. I know that causes some of you to shriek in outrage, and I understand that. Believe it or not, I do. I understand that. And the main reason that I understand it is because I do so much shopping at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. And I don't actually, it's paradoxical, it's hypocritical really, but although I dog-ear pages, I can't stand finding dog-eared pages in books that I buy secondhand. But it's so convenient. I haven't mastered the knack that so many of you have of those multicolored adhesive tabs. I just instinctively rebel against them. I think because what do you do with them? When you're done, what do you do with them? And you've got to have them always to hand. The thing about dog-earing a page is that you don't need any help to do it. You can be anywhere and dog-ear a page of a book. If you're caught unawares, you don't need your stickers with you. You don't even need a pencil with you. And another reason being that those little adhesive stickers, those tabs that you all like so much, they are the perfect kind of thing that beagles love to eat and love to gorge themselves on. And that is not poop that I would want to pick up. And besides, I haven't learned how to do it yet. So I do dog-ear pages, but I've tried to be better at it since I've seen the horror that it inspires in so many of you. I've tried to be better at it. Most of what I read these days is new releases from publishers, and they come with the folded pub sheet. And usually that's more than one page. And what I have started to do, since I don't need the pub sheet, what I've started to do is fold the pub sheet and tear it into strips and use those as bookmarks, because that is something that I have with me at all times. I have the pub sheet with the book at all times. So I've started doing that and just putting that where I want it to be, where I want to come back to the page rather than dog earing it. So we'll see in 2018 if I get better at doing that all the time. Question number 7. Have you ever told somebody you don't own a book when you do? I can't imagine a circumstance in which I would do that. I don't think I ever have. Question number 8. Have you ever told someone you haven't read a book when you have? Again, why would I say I haven't read something when I have read it? I know the question's getting at something, but I can't. You can feel free to enlighten me in the comments. I can't for the life of me imagine why you would tell somebody that you hadn't read something when you have. Question number 9. Have you ever skipped a chapter or a section of a book? Sounds like anathema, but I have. In the aforementioned YA genre, and YA, it's often popular to have multiple, a large cast of characters, and each chapter is someone narrating something. And I know that the authors are probably thinking that they're revealing a lot in terms of character or pacing or the new world view or the alternate narrator reliability by doing that. But a lot of times, it strikes me as just you're not willing to let go of your first draft. In your first draft, one of those characters narrated the whole thing, and then your beta readers told you, no, it needs to be everybody, or it needs to be some other character, and you think, well, I don't want it to be some other character, I want it to be this character, I'll just have everybody narrate it. And your heart's not in it, and you don't do a good job at it, and most of the time it strikes me that way, that it's not carefully thought out, and a lot of times it's just simple repetition. So the rare occasions when I am invested in a YA series or a YA novel, and it's doing that, usually by page 200 I know whether or not I want to listen to Evan or I want to get back to Amber. So, and in cases like that I will skip, but never otherwise. Let's see here. Question number 10, the last question. Have you ever badmouthed a book you actually liked? And again, I can't for the life of me think of a reason why I would do that. It's such a self-evidently nonsensical question that I know it must have a reason behind it. And I'm guessing that it and a couple of these other questions that I don't understand at all must be YA-centric. They must come from that world. So, those of you who read a lot of YA, if I have any viewers who do, is this a thing in the YA world that you would badmouth a book you actually liked? I don't know. I don't know. Something about it strikes me as alien. It makes sense. It seems like it makes sense, but it doesn't make any sense that I know about. So it's a perplexing question on which to end. But we're done with the guilty reader book tag. I'm just going to tag some people and then go about my miserable day. And I tag let's see here, Britta. If I don't load her down with tags, I tag Olive if these are questions that are of interest. Matthew Sharappa, definitely I want to hear your answers to these. Curtis, Steve Partridge. Let's see here, Peg. I tag you on this, and this business of breaking up a tag into one question per day. We got places to be, young lady. Do the whole thing in one video. Richardson reads. Brian's Book Bastion. I bet your answers to these would be great. Sue's Book Nook. Richard reads. If you're having trouble coming up with ideas for videos, how about doing a tag from Steve? But really, these are the kinds of, you notice that this is all personal experience. This is not rattling off book titles. And those are the kinds of questions that I most love. So any of you who want to do this, I will certainly watch and comment. But in the meantime, that's it for my my bleak and barren Sunday. I would ordinarily say things are looking up, but of course tomorrow is a bleak and barren Monday. No mail. So I don't know. I may make a video. Maybe two. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.